This is the President's report to the Senate on the status of government responses to parliamentary committee reports. This is something that's provided twice yearly. It's one of those documents that would seem to be fairly dry and often just become fairly routine and pass into the dusty places wherever these reports get filed away fairly rapidly. But as I've had a bit of a regular need to do since returning to this place is to just look at what things have changed and what things are the same in the 10 years since I was last here. And this report, I would actually encourage people to have a look at it. It's not particularly long, it's 17 pages, but it simply lists all of the outstanding committee reports, Senate committee reports and joint committee reports where the government has yet to respond to the recommendations. Now, it's not the sole purpose of a Senate committee inquiry to produce recommendations for a government to then decide whether or not they act on, but it's a pretty important part of it. All of us here know that we get great value out of just hearing from the community, of going to places and seeing what's happening on the ground, of looking at all those submissions, of considering things in more depth. But the end result is often, not always, a report which seeks or which makes recommendations, often unanimous, sometimes not, proposing that the government do things to address the problem that the committee has identified and the solutions they've identified based on the public feedback. It's one of the best mechanisms for the public to have an input into the issues that affect them, and for people in the community who have expertise, whether academic or theoretical expertise or practical expertise, lived expertise, to have a say on important policy issues that affect them or that they have an interest in. I'm sure all of us here would recognise that we are not the experts on everything, and in often cases not the experts at all on some matters. So it is very concerning to see just how many reports have not been responded to. The Senate has a convention, I guess, that the government should respond within 3 months. I think the House of Reps convention is 6 months. This report lists all of those, this table basically, 17-page long table, lists all of those Senate committee reports where the government has yet to respond. Most of them are well over 6 months. Some of them don't need to look very far. There's a very significant report, for example, on certain aspects of the Queensland Government administration related to Commonwealth Government Affairs. Special Senate Select Committee reported over 2 years ago, nearly 3 years ago now. No response received. I'm just picking a few of these at random. The effectiveness of special arrangements for the supply of pharmaceutical benefits scheme medicines to remote area Aboriginal health services. 2011, that one was tabled. No response over 6 years later. This doesn't mean nothing's happened in that area. I'm not saying that, but I am saying that a fundamental and very basic part of accountability, not just for government but for all of us to the community, the accountability that we all get paid for to conduct these Senate inquiries, the public money that's spent on them, is that there be a response, even if the response is just, yeah, we're already doing that, thanks. It's not that hard. Well, apparently it is that hard, because we've got reports like that over 6 years, all of these ones in the community affairs area, another one from 2012, one from 2013, 3 from 2014, 2 from 2015. It's just not good enough. And it might seem like a really dry and tedious thing to be talking about government responses to committee reports, but that's when the Senate committee brings down a report, that's usually what we all talk about. We'll talk about plenty of other things, but the one thing we almost always will talk about is what the recommendations are for action. I've spoken a number of times since I've been back here about housing affordability. It was an Economics Committee inquiry into the Australian housing affordability challenge, tabled May 2015, still no response. A report on the exploitation of temporary work visa holders, a major issue in my state of Queensland, tabled March, nearly 2 years ago, no response. Impacts of mining in the Murray-Darling Basin, something we were talking about, a report from 2009, no response. This is across the life of the Labor government as well, of course. It's a joke, and the fact that this happens every 6 months shouldn't be a reason to just ignore it. and I really would like the government to do better and us to all do better and insisting
Thank you, Senator
that we get better
Bartlett. Your time
responses.
has expired. Do you wish to seek to continue your remarks? No? Okay, thank you. So the question is that the motion moved by Senator Bartlett be agreed to. Those of that opinion say aye. Contrary, the ayes have it. So are there any other documents on page 15? Senator Bartlett.
Thank you. I would like to also speak to another document because I think it's important enough to merit some debate, and that is the annual statement on Our North, Our Future, white paper on developing Northern Australia, which I think is...
It's number 33.
Yes.
Yep.
Senator Canavan is in the chamber at the moment, so I'm sure he'll be pleased to know that somebody is looking closely at the report that he's provided. Although I would have to say it's a pretty disappointing one. It's just 6 pages and it's really like a 6-page press release, ranting on about the government's magnificent achievements. And look, I'm not going to be mindlessly partisan and suggest that the government hasn't done anything, because they have done some things. But a lot of this, frankly, is sloganeering from the minister, and it's a pretty disappointing statement in terms of the content of it. There are aspects there that are specified in regards to better roads and rail, and that is certainly something as a Queenslander I do support in general. The issue, of course, is where those rail lines go and where those roads go and who benefits. And if they are rail lines, as we all know, rail lines being proposed to open up new deposits of thermal coal in northern Queensland, then that might benefit a small number of people. It might benefit a massive multinational like Glencore or Adani, maybe Gina Rinehart or Clyde Palmer. But for the vast majority of people in Northern Australia, in the long term, it is not what is needed. And when we do have money that is available to invest in Northern Australia, as is needed, then it is crucial that it is done effectively for the sustainable long-term good of those communities. I was in Rockhampton. I saw Senator Canavan's office. Very nice big picture of him out the front there, I must say, in the street there. But met with a number of people there, and some of them very publicly, some of them not so publicly, but all of them, and some of them in areas of business, some environmental campaigners, some of them community service organisations, all of them with ideas about areas where often quite small investments in their community could benefit, bring significant economic benefit and significant community benefit, not rely on the boom-bust cycle that has actually caused significant damage to some communities and towns in the regions. And they were unanimously appalled that the Rockhampton City Council, for example, was spending ratepayers' money on a airstrip for Adani, well outside the council area, as were, and as are, of course, the people of Townsville, whose council was doing the same thing. So the fact that there needs to be government support for projects and infrastructure and sustainable, long-term, stable jobs that will build communities in a region is not controversial. Everybody supports that. Key issue is how that money is used, and unfortunately in Queensland, as in many other areas, there's a sad history of misguided mega projects which are just wastes of public money at best, and often deliberate pork barrels to benefit party donors or key constituencies at worst. And we do need to do much better than that. Look, there is one area there that's in this report that I'll try to say something positive about, which is in regards to the area of research and innovation. A lot of people don't realise that one of the biggest employers in Rockhampton is the university there, in Central Queensland University. Been there a long time now and has developed some very significant and very valuable programs, not just for people in Rockhampton and Central Queensland, I might say, but they have campuses in many other parts of the country, have a campus in Mackay. And they play a very significant role in skilling people in that region to meet needs that are there. And that includes significant social service areas like aged care, like workers, to meet the need that is already there and will be greater as the National Disability Insurance Scheme is rolled out. So the investment needs to be put in there, and in a way it's positive to see a recognition that we need world-leading research and innovation in the north. And of course, further north in Townsville, James Cook Uni is a world leader, particularly in marine park research, which is why they can repeatedly tell us with great expertise how much damage and how much danger the Great Barrier Reef and the marine park surrounding it is because of the refusal of this government to do anything other than continue to try and burn more and more coal. But unfortunately, if you look at some of the research centres that are being supported, you've got to question whether that's the best place to be putting it. And that sort of detail in this report again gives me great cause to think that the government's priorities are very much in the wrong direction when it comes to northern Queensland and northern Australia.
Thank you, Senator Bartlett. So you are moving to take note. So the question is that the motion is moved by Senator Bartlett to take note of document number 33 be agreed to. Those of that opinion say aye. Against, I believe the ayes